Welcome to this podcast from the Human Capital Institute's Determining the Need for Talent Management Technologies. This webcast was sponsored by Taleo. This event was presented by William Rothwell, Ph.D. and Professor of Human Resource Development at Pennsylvania State University. Many human resource professionals and others charged with taking the lead on talent management technologies face a dizzying and often confusing array of choices on just what technology decisions to make when selecting the best technology support for their talent management efforts. This session will review key points to consider in making decisions about talent management technology.
In this part. So let's move right into who should choose the software. We have to be cautious here because there's really several different kinds of software in the talent management world. I would not to promote anyone's products, but I would just mention that Burson & Associates does have a talent management software report that currently markets for about $999. And it's not a biased report. It breaks down the different features of the available software in this field. Burson, B-E-R-S-I-N. It's worth considering having a look at that. But one of the things we've got to be careful about is that there are different kinds of software available. And I find that it basically falls into three categories. Category number one would be an add-on to a human resource information system. I won't drop any names there, but some of the larger HRIS systems do have add-on modules for succession or talent management. Some organizations are tempted to select those because they fit with an existing HRIS. But they don't always do everything that we would like them to do. So that's a concern about that kind of software. A second kind is what I call a specialized type of software. That tends to focus from soup to nuts on the talent management arena, and it may be a little more robust than some of those add-on modules. And the third kind would be very specialized software that would do specific things that we might want done in a talent management effort. So, of course, where to start? I urge you to consider to always start by deciding what you want the software to do before you purchase it. Of course, we've all heard that old saying, but sometimes we forget it when it comes to talent management software. In other words, there's a temptation to believe that if we buy the software, we will get a turnkey solution to all of our talent management problems. And of course, that is not true. In fact, it may simply end up confusing the question of what we really want out of it. As I tell my consulting clients, the most important things to consider when getting started in a succession or talent program is three key things: goals, roles, and accountabilities. Goals. Why do we want to do the program? What are the business problems that have prompted interest in a talent management or succession area? It could be, for example, concern over pending retirements. It could be concern over business continuity. It could be concerns about the knowledge loss that we will experience as a result of very experienced technical people retiring or leaving the organization. My research shows about 22 different goals that a talent or succession program could meet. 22 goals. Well, you cannot meet 22 goals equally well. Someone must set priorities, so goals must be clear. And from those goals, we get our metrics. You know, you measure what you want something to achieve. Roles speaks to who does what. And I find it sometimes helpful to develop role definitions. Here's what we want our senior managers to do. Here's what we want our middle managers to do. Here's what we want HR to do. Here's what we want individuals to do. Sometimes it's helpful getting people clear on what their expected role behaviors are to be in the implementation of a talent management program generally, and what their role should be in the technology selection and use. So what are some of the issues to consider when you select it? Well, what do you plan to do with it, of course, is the number one thing to think about. How many people should have access to it? In other words, how secure and confidential do we want it to be? And, of course, that goes to the most famous question in succession planning, which is to tell or not to tell, sort of like Hamlet's to be or not to be. Well, many organizations find that there's a middle ground between telling and not telling, and that middle ground is informing people on an annual basis if they are on a high potential list. Those who are not on the list can always be given some coaching about how to be placed on the list if they desire that, and we can also have a fairly good discussion. But one of the questions here is security. Who do we want to have access to some of the sensitive information? What kinds of security may be needed? What will be the geographic scope covered? That basically goes to scalability. Do we want to purchase something and grow it over time? And do we want to have a global growth of this? Or do we want to start in a domestic market, pilot test it, and then try it on an international scale? And if we look at it internationally, we have to realize that connection speeds will vary around the world, and this can be an issue to be considered in our selection of software here for a moment. When should software be considered? Well, it depends on the rollout plan for the talent program and what groups we will include initially. We'll talk a little bit later about the various approaches in getting started, but it may be influenced by where we start. If we start from the top down, as many novices will be tempted to do, start with a senior executive team and roll it down into the organization, then we may have to involve that senior team in the process. But one of the challenges we face with using the senior team is that there's usually not that many of them. So where we really run into trouble in rollouts is when we start to involve all the middle managers. Of course, some companies choose not to take it down to middle management, so one of the questions for you to consider strategically is how far down do you want to take your succession and talent program? Do you want to run it down to frontline supervisor, or do you want it to be a top-of-the-house program only? Another issue is the pilot testing process. How will we pilot test it, with whom, and how does that affect our confidentiality issues?